Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HD, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to Formula One in 2026. The summer break is over, and we are back for the rest of the 2026 Formula One season, and it is this weekend, the 12th race of the season, as we are coming to the end now of the European part of the Formula One season. And yeah, it is the final Dutch Grand Prix weekend. And the reason I say final is because after this weekend, the Dutch Grand Prix will be no more, at least for the foreseeable future. A Grand Prix that, except for what, maybe one particular year, has not really given us much excitement. It's been a pretty boring pedestrian Grand Prix, to be honest. And, the sprint race we had earlier at Zandvoort really exemplified just how boring of a circuit, or not boring of a circuit, but just how boring of a Grand Prix this particular Grand Prix tends to be, unfortunately. It's a very unique track. I do like Zandvoort as a racetrack, but it just doesn't produce good racing. It just doesn't, especially with these types of generation of Formula One cars that are, a lot bigger, heavier. This track just isn't conducive to good racing, unfortunately. So yeah, this is the final Dutch Grand Prix, again, for the foreseeable future. Hopefully it will be a good send-off here at Zandvoort for the Grand Prix. But yeah, we are back for Formula One in 2026. It's been a month since the last Grand Prix in Hungary, and we are back to see mainly who is going to win the Drivers' Championship in 2026. Will it be Kimi Antonelli, who is in the lead and is just over 50 points clear of his nearest rival, or will Lewis Hamilton win that 8th World Championship? That is really what the rest of 2026 is all about. After the sprint race, though, it is worked out more so definitely in Kimi Antonelli's favour. We'll go through the sprint race results soon in terms of who finished where, and I'll go through the championship standings in a moment, as they are slightly different from what they were coming into this weekend. But other than, all the sprint stuff, and the sprint race, by the way, in terms of excitement, yeah, it was just terrible. The only thing we got was Leclerc passing Lando Norris in what was clearly just more Mario Kart bullshit racing. Other than that, it was a pretty boring, again, pedestrian race. It was only, 24 laps, but waste of time, really. Other than the sprint stuff, if you actually look at the running this weekend in terms of the pecking order and how close the teams are, especially at the front of the field, it looks really close and competitive, and it looks like we're going to have a very good qualifying session today in terms of, we could have legitimately 3 different teams taking pole position today. It really is that close. You've got, I think, at least 4 drivers who could genuinely take pole position today, maybe even 5 drivers. That's how good it's looking. But from a racing perspective, qualifying is very, very important at this particular Grand Prix because it is just so hard to overtake here at Zandvoort, unless you've got a much faster car than the car ahead. You need to be, like a second a lap at least quicker, really, than the car ahead to, be getting ahead. So, yeah. Qualifying is what it's all about this weekend. We did have some rain, funnily enough, on the, not even on the final lap, it was like on the final turn, basically, of the final lap of the race. And then the lap after the final race, it was pretty much raining. But looking at the weather, it looks like it is going to be a dry, cold but dry weekend or rest of the weekend at Zandvoort. So, unfortunately, the weather is not going to do us any favours in terms of spicing things up. Still, we have not had a wet race in 2026. I wonder if we'll get one. But yeah, uh, qualifying is what it's all about. And that is what obviously we are focusing on today. And I can't wait for it because, again, we've got at least 3 teams who could be on pole position today. And that's really what you want to see is, many different drivers and multiple teams, fighting for pole position. But also wanted to say, obviously, good to see you guys. Hello, hope you're all doing well. Hope you've all had a good summer break. Hope you've had a good summer holiday if you've had one. For me, obviously, I finished my uni semester, the latest one that I was doing. I finished it 2 weeks ago. So since then, I've literally just been, I wouldn't say on holiday. I've not been, abroad or, been away from home or anything. But in terms of work, I've done absolutely nothing for the last 2 weeks. I made sure, all those videos that came out during the summer break, I made sure to get them all edited and done before my uni work finished so I could have this pretty much the rest of the month off. So, yeah, I've just done nothing really other than, go to the odd football match here and there, go to the pub here and there the last couple of weeks. And that's pretty much what I'm doing probably, for the rest of the month as well. So, yeah, good to be back, though, for Formula One. We've got a lot of races coming up between now and the final race of the season, which we now believe is going to be at Imola in early December. We've got, for the next, 10 weeks, 11 weeks, we've got, 8, 9 races. So, going to be coming thick and fast the rest of this season. There's not going to be many weeks where there is, not a race. For example, we've got 3 races next month in September, 4 races in October, sorry, and then another 3 probably in November, or at least 2, and then the final race is going to be at Imola, we believe, on the first weekend of December. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of races coming up, again, very thick and fast, and hopefully you guys will be around to enjoy, along with me, the rest of this season. But yeah, today, all about qualifying, and of course, we'll go through all the data, the key data so far from this weekend to give you as good of a look at, who should be wearing qualifying and the teams and drivers to look out for. So we'll get into that. Obviously, I'll get into the championship standings in a moment. Now that we've had the sprint race, again, they are slightly different from what they were. But yeah, good to see all you guys. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you've all had a good summer break, and I hope you can all join me today in watching along and enjoying qualifying from Zandvoort for the final time for, again, the foreseeable future. And yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, it will be a good one. And I think it will. I think it will definitely be a very competitive one at Zandvoort. And one final thing as well, as usual, is that there is a poll running in the chat, as usual, where I've asked you guys, who do you think is going to take pole position? And the options in the poll are Antonelli, Russell, Leclerc, and Norris. Those are the 4 options I've put in the poll. The 4 most likely, I think, and I think if you've watched enough of the Dutch Grand Prix so far, the event so far, you would probably agree that those are the 4 most likely to be on pole position. So out of those 4, who do you think takes it? Let me know in that poll. And when we get to Q3, the start of Q3, of course, I will go through and we'll see what the results are from that pole. Sorry it's taking me so long to get through this intro, by the way, but obviously I haven't streamed for a month, literally a month away from streaming, and yeah, obviously not used to it. A month away from streaming, it might not seem a lot of time to you guys, but considering the amount of times or the amount that I stream during the season, a month away it feels like 3 or 4 months to me. It's yeah, quite a lot. But yeah, great to be back, and hopefully we'll have a good, competitive, and exciting rest of 2026. Anyway, let's get started by just looking at the sprint race. So, George Russell won the sprint race from Charles Leclerc second, Lando Norris third, fourth, Kimi Antonelli, fifth, Oscar Piastri, sixth, Max Verstappen, seventh, Lewis Hamilton, and then eighth, Pierre Gasly, finishing quite far behind Lewis Hamilton, the midfield, as usual, miles behind the front-running teams. It was pretty much the sprint result decided in qualifying, or sprint qualifying. There was only one, or a couple position changes. One was Antonelli getting ahead of Piastri on the start, and the other one was obviously Leclerc overtaking Lando Norris during the sprint. But again, that was not down to any skill, really. It was just Leclerc having battery boost and Lando not having any battery left. So it wasn't like a genuine, skillful overtake. But yeah, generally, it was a pretty boring sprint race. Don't know why anyone thought a sprint race at Zandvoort would be a good idea. Yeah, I really just don't get it. The worst thing about it, though, is the next sprint race, or the final sprint race of this season, is in Singapore, which is going to be, without doubt, the worst sprint race of the season. And not only the worst sprint race of the season, I think it'll be the worst sprint race of all time. Without question. Honestly, I think it's going to be... It's actually going to be, I was going to say scary how bad it will be. I actually think it'll be quite funny how bad it will be. We've seen many Singapore Grand Prix that are just a complete snooze fest. That sprint race is going to be dreadful, absolutely dreadful, but that's what they've decided in terms of where the sprint races take place. But let's now get into the championship standings coming out of the sprint. So, for Antonelli, even though he didn't finish in the top three, and the reason he didn't really finish in the top three is because of the poor qualifying he had, which is due to him going into the gravel during sprint qualifying, and he lost 25 points of downforce from that, from damaging his floor by going through the gravel. If he didn't do that, arguably could have taken the sprint pole position, and it could have been a much different sprint race for Antonelli had he not done that during sprint qualifying. But still, despite that, he has still pulled away from his nearest rival in the championship, Lewis Hamilton. He is now 53 points clear of Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton now only 3 points clear of George Russell, and looking at the running so far, I think George Russell probably is going to get back into second in the championship. Given how Mercedes look and how Hamilton looks in his Ferrari car at the minute. Leclerc in fourth, Lando Norris in fifth, and then Max Verstappen sixth, Oscar Piastri seventh, Isaac Hadjar eighth. Isaac Hadjar, of course, not racing this weekend because he injured his wrist boxing. Now, you may be wondering, why on earth is a Formula One driver boxing? It's because it's part of the training that all the drivers pretty much do. The physical training that they do, when they're not racing during the off season on summer break to keep themselves fit. And yeah, he's injured his wrist to the point where he can't race this weekend. I don't know if he's racing at Monza. I hope he is, but I don't know. That means though that Liam Lawson has stepped into the Red Bull car this weekend, and replacing Lawson at Racing Bulls is the returning Yuki Tsunoda. So Yuki Tsunoda back in the saddle and back in Formula One. Good to see. Tsunoda already pretty much on decent pace. He's not been that much slower than Arvid Lindblad so far this weekend, given that obviously Lindblad has been in the car the whole season. But Lawson has been quite far off the pace of Verstappen, which is not really a surprise. But yeah, Hadjar not in the car this weekend, but his 8th in the championship is definitely going to be safe. And then Pierre Gasly back up to 9th because he scored a point in the sprint race. He is level on points of Lawson, but he's ahead in the championship purely because his best race result this season is better than what Lawson's best race result is. I think Lawson's best race result is 6th, and Gasly, of course, had that podium in Monaco, so that's why he is ahead in the championship. But the most important thing for the Drivers' Championship after the sprint race is that, yeah, Antonelli has extended his gap over his nearest rival by 3 points. So that is important. On the constructors' side, Mercedes pretty far clear of Ferrari, nearly 100 points clear of Ferrari at this point. Ferrari still comfortably second, McLaren then in third. 50 points clear of Red Bull, who are fourth. Racing Bulls are still just about in 5th place, even though Alpine did score a point in the sprint race. Alpine, though, have improved their car. They've brought some upgrades this weekend, and they've definitely taken, by the looks of it, a step forward in performance. So that battle for 5th in the championship is going to heat up even more. But yeah, Alpine still 4 points behind Racing Bulls in the fight for 5th. Haas in 7th. Audi up to 8th, obviously, after the last Grand Prix in Hungary, where they scored a couple points. Williams down to 9th. Aston Martin in 10th. And Cadillac last with 0 points. So that's how the championship standings now look coming out of the sprint race, the dreadful and a complete waste of time sprint race that we had. But let's now get into the sprint qualifying data from yesterday, because it does give us a pretty good idea of what probably will happen in today's qualifying session. So, George Russell, just about by half a tenth over Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc, taking the pole position. George Russell's had a great summer break. He's announced, I think, is it an engagement with his partner? And definitely mentally seems a lot just healthier than he was, say, just before the start of the summer break, where I think he was in a pretty horrible rut of form and a horrible mental rut because of that. So good to see that Russell has started the second half of the season, as you may call it, in good form so far. Obviously, we've not had much running still, and the sprint, it's not massively important for the championship, because unless your rival, scores 0 points, then you can't really gain much, if anything, during sprint sessions on your championship rivals. So, from a driver's championship perspective, it's good that Russell looks like he's in good form so far this weekend, but he's only gained 4 points on his teammate, so I don't think it means anything in regards to the Drivers' Championship, at least so far, for him this weekend. Second, Lando Norris. McLaren keep up their strong performance. Obviously, they won the last Grand Prix in Hungary. McLaren clearly, are now a proper, I won't say proper front-running team. They've been a front-running team all season, but now they are properly in a position to fight for race wins, race in, race out. I think they are pretty clearly now at that level. Whether they can win or not really comes down to the particular tracks or the driver performances at this point. But McLaren are now at that point where they can win pretty much any Grand Prix. Again, it just depends on maybe a bit of luck going their way. Norris has been very quick this weekend. Obviously, he is normally very quick here at Zandvoort. And yeah, McLaren generally looking good, as you can see from sprint qualifying. Both McLarens within a tenth of pole position. Charles Leclerc third, brilliant lap from Leclerc. Not only to get his Ferrari in between the two McLarens, but also to outqualify his teammate by 0.6 of a second and to be, 4 positions ahead. So a brilliant qualifying session from Leclerc. And Leclerc has had such a good weekend so far, finishing second in the sprint race. Hopefully keeps it up, because you never know. This might be a race that Ferrari might be able to win if they can just get, a good enough, say, grid position, maybe a front row grid position, and maybe if, the start goes their way tomorrow, you just never know, especially with the form that Leclerc is in. So, yeah, Leclerc looking good for Ferrari, and Ferrari look competitive, but whether they've got enough to win this weekend, again, it really depends on a couple things, which I'll probably get into more so later on. And then Antonelli, yeah, he had damage to his floor. That's why he was in fifth. And despite having the damage to his floor, still was only just a couple tenths away from pole. If he didn't have damage to his floor, I think Antonelli would have got pole position. And I still believe that Antonelli is the quicker Mercedes driver. And I think all things being equal, as long as both drivers, both Mercedes drivers, as long as they don't get any damage to their cars, I think, it should be favouring Antonelli in terms of, who finishes ahead. So, yeah, Antonelli, disappointing in the end for sprint qualifying, but Mercedes do look, at least in qualifying trim, to have the fastest car by maybe a tenth of a second at most. So for Kimi, as long as he can not damage his car and keep it all together, pole position is absolutely up for grabs today. And then a big drop off to sixth place, Max Verstappen, half a second off the pace. And Red Bull have been so bad this weekend. I didn't expect them to be amazing, but I didn't expect them to be this far off the pace, half a second away from pole, which around this track, which is so short, it means just over 70 seconds long. That is really a lot of lap time to be losing around such a short lap. It really is. So, yeah, I'm very disappointed that the Red Bull have turned up here and are just so far off the pace. I thought they would be, I didn't think they would be that quick here, but I thought they'd be at least in the mix enough to where Max could get maybe onto the second row of the grid. Maybe even sneak onto the front row, because we know obviously this is his home race and he is superb around this circuit generally. But the Red Bull is so slow, I don't think Max can really do anything other than maybe sneak onto the third row of the grid at best in sixth place. I think a top 5 honestly looks pretty unlikely for Max Verstappen, which is really quite sad to say. And very sad for the home crowd as well, considering this will be the final time, maybe ever, that they'll get to cheer him on in his home country. Lewis Hamilton 7th. Hamilton has not been good this weekend. I think Hamilton is running a new version of the floor, or at least he was in qualifying or sprint qualifying. So, yeah, maybe a bit of a setup issue there, explaining why Lewis is so far off the pace. I mean, this track generally is not a great track for Hamilton anyway. It's not a horrible track for him, but it's not one of his better ones. So I'm not necessarily massively surprised that he's in 7th place. But yeah, him being pretty much 6/10 of a second slower than his teammate, that is quite bad, obviously. So yeah, if it is a setup issue, hopefully it'll go with a much better setup, and we can see him a lot more in the action. And especially, you know, if Antonelli doesn't have any offs today, keeps it on track and is on at least the front row in qualifying, then Lewis Hamilton really needs to be at least on the second row, because you can't afford, if you consider yourself to be properly fighting for the championship, if you're Lewis Hamilton, you cannot be, multiple positions behind Antonelli, especially on a track like this where qualifying really does decide where you are going to end up in the race, unless, we have loads of rain or something. But yeah, that is really the front runners. Obviously we've got the second Red Bull of Liam Lawson, but he did not make SQ3, and given his pace in that Red Bull, doesn't look like he's going to make Q3 today either. He's just too far off the pace, and also the Red Bull is just generally too slow at the minute, and especially around this track this weekend. They just don't have any pace. So yeah, Lawson I don't think is going to be a top 10 runner. So you had Pierre Gasly in 8th, Gabriel Bortoleto only 0.05 of a second behind in 9th, and then Arvid Lindblad in 10th. Surprising to see Racing Bulls outpaced by both Alpine and Audi, but Alpine and Audi have definitely made a step forward. Audi, we saw the step forward they made, shortly before the summer break, and Alpine, they brought some upgrades, and yeah, they've clearly made a step up as well. So Racing Bulls now have got a lot more competition for scoring some of those points that they've been scoring quite often in the last few races. So yeah, midfield really hotting up in terms of competition, at least at the front of the midfield. Pierre Gasly, of course, we know, is a driver that has always been very good here. Finished on the podium here in 2023 after starting, 12th or 13th on the grid. Finished 4th here in the first race we had here the first race back we had here in 2021. Gasly finished 4th in the AlphaTauri, I remember, and I think qualified 4th as well. So yeah, Gasly has always been super strong at this circuit, so it's not really a surprise to see him in the top 10. And then yeah, good to see Bortoleto and Lindblad in the top 10 as well. And in terms of the rest of the field, you had Liam Lawson 11th, Yuki Tsunoda 12th. Tsunoda was only about 0.1 of a second, or not 0.1, 100th of a second behind Liam Lawson. So yeah, funny how that works. Colapinto then was in 13th, Hulkenberg 14th, Ocon 15th, Albon 16th, and then knocked out in SQ1 was Behrman, Sainz, Stroll, Bottas, Perez, Alonso. The reason Alonso ended up last was because his straight line mode on his engine malfunctioned, and he wasn't able to basically have the power that he should have had in sprint qualifying. So Aston Martin, unfortunately, not able to showcase their true potential. I think Alonso could have possibly got into SQ2 if it had not been for that issue. So Aston Martin, their pace is okay at best. It's nothing special, and they're still nowhere near the top 10. So they're still terrible. But in terms of the pecking order in the field so far, why is it shaking out the way it is? Well, let's get into the sector time data to see just that. So the first sector, really like the final sector as well, it's important, but it's more so important that you just don't make really a mistake in terms of trying to nail a qualifying lap around this circuit. The middle sector is by far the most important sector. You will absolutely have to nail that middle sector if you're going to have a good lap here. But the first and the final sector are relatively simple enough. Obviously, the first sector, you've got turn 1, which is called Tarzan, and then you've got the very banked turn 3, which, is a unique corner, but the drivers have all pretty much hacked it, and, they pretty much know what they're doing in terms of the approach to that corner. Most of the first sector, you're flat out, so it is a relatively simple enough first sector here at Zandvoort. And Mercedes, no real surprise because it's mostly flat out and they have the strongest engine and a very efficient car in a straight line. They are the quickest team in the first sector. 10th quicker than McLaren, 2/10 quicker than Ferrari, and 3/10 quicker pretty much than Red Bull. And again, it's pretty much because of that efficiency in a straight line. Racing Bull's then the quickest midfield team by a 1/10.5 over Audi and then Alpine, and then a big drop off to Williams and Haas, who are both just nowhere this weekend. And then Cadillac only about a 10th or so quicker than Aston Martin. Again, though, that's the Aston Martin of Stroll, not Alonso. The middle sector, though, really is the best part of the lap for showing, in terms of the aerodynamic or chassis side, who has the best amount of grip for this track this weekend, at least from a team perspective. And McLaren and Ferrari, two teams who were very strong in Hungary, which of course was the last aero or chassis dominant track we went to, in terms of that being the most important thing. No surprise, they're the two quickest teams in the middle sector. McLaren, incredibly quick in the middle sector. 1/10.5 quicker than Ferrari. 4/10, though, quicker than both Red Bull and Mercedes. And for qualifying today, for both McLaren and Ferrari, the middle sector is what they need to repeatedly nail. They are quicker than Mercedes in the middle sector, there is no doubt about it. But, as I'll get onto in a moment, it's not just the middle sector they need to nail if they're going to end up on pole position. But the middle sector, if they can get the best out of their car through this part of the lap, they're putting themselves right in the fight for pole position, because Mercedes are giving away quite a few tenths of a second in the middle sector. But yeah, McLaren looking incredibly good in the middle sector, which is great to see. Alpine and Audi not that far off the pace of Mercedes in the middle sector, and half a second off the pace of McLaren in the middle sector as well. Bit of a drop off then to Racing Bulls, and then another big drop off to Haas, a second off the pace. And then Aston Martin, 1.4 seconds off. Still quicker than Williams, despite it being with Lance Stroll, that sector or that middle sector time. And then Cadillac, no surprise, the slowest team. But really, for McLaren and Ferrari, it's the final sector which is the most important for them. Because even though, yes, they are so quick in the middle sector, and quite a bit quicker than Mercedes in the middle sector, it's finishing the lap well and continuing on good enough speed in that final sector, which is really going to decide whether they actually do get pole position or not. So that's what it's going to come down to, because in the first sector and the final sector, Mercedes are the best team, no doubt. And that's really because, again, of Mercedes' advantage in a straight line. But if McLaren and Ferrari can just be, I mean, they don't even have to be quicker than Mercedes in the final sector, but if they can be close enough on pace to where, overall for the lap, they're still ahead of Mercedes because of that middle sector pace, so that's all that matters. Ferrari a 10th off. McLaren, as you can see, quarter of a second off. For McLaren, if they can be 3-4 tenths quicker than Mercedes in the middle sector like they are, but only say a tenth at worst off in the final sector, then I think that's enough for McLaren to get pole position. But again, if they're losing, like you can see here, quarter of a second or more, that's what's going to make the difference in Mercedes' favour. And same for Ferrari. You can't afford to lose too much time in the final sector, after having such a good middle sector. But yeah, Mercedes, the quickest team through this part of the lap. Audi and Alpine looking very good. Red Bull consistently, not through every part of the lap, but pretty much the slowest by far of the front four teams. And then Racing Bulls, not that far behind them, only a tenth behind in this part of the lap. Haas and Williams a bit further behind, and then Cadillac a couple tenths quicker than Aston Martin in the final sector. But again, in terms of the fight for pole between Mercedes, McLaren and Ferrari, that's what it's all going to come down to, is can McLaren and Ferrari keep up enough pace in the final sector to reward essentially how strong they are in the middle sector to get pole position. And if they can, then they're in a great position for the race. They really, really are, because the Mercedes won't really be a threat to them in the race if they're so strong in the middle sector and ahead on track. So yeah, it's going to come down to very fine margins, I would say, in qualifying today. And again, that's what we want to see. We want to see it come down to the fine margins. But with McLaren and Ferrari, I do wonder whether maybe they'll take a slight bit of wing off just to be that bit quicker in the first and final sector to combat Mercedes' advantage in the first sector and the final sector, to make sure that even though they're quick in the middle sector, they're quick enough in the other parts of the lap to get the job done. So we'll see if they do that. Sorry for the silence there, I was just clearing my throat. Overall, though, I do think Mercedes have got the fastest car for qualifying today. Not by much. It's a tenth of a second at most, if that. Might even be only half a tenth at most. And it's really, again, it's because Mercedes in the first sector and the final sector have got that straight line speed advantage. And it is just about keeping them ahead of McLaren and Ferrari, who are clearly superior through the corners. And that is what is going to make qualifying today so exciting. That battle between, the straight line speed and the efficiency of the Mercedes and the aerodynamic and chassis quality of the McLaren and the Ferrari cars. And we could legitimately have 3 different teams possibly getting pole position. I think there is no doubt that is a possibility. In terms of the pecking order, though, I would say Mercedes are just ahead of, I would say, McLaren second, Ferrari third, Red Bull clearly fourth. Red Bull, I would say, are about half a second, maybe 4 tenths at best off the pace of Mercedes. They're nowhere near close enough to fight for pole position. For Max, the best thing he can do is just capitalise on certain drivers not performing anywhere near well enough, or being anywhere near quick enough compared to their faster teammates, like Piastri and Lewis Hamilton. That's the only thing Max can do, is capitalise on them maybe not performing. But, Red Bull, that's where they are this weekend. Really, again, disappointing performance from them. And then in the midfield, again, Alpine have improved, but do Alpine genuinely have the fastest midfield car? It's hard to say. I'd probably say Audi, I think, I've got the fastest midfield car this weekend. And then I would go Alpine in 6th. Racing Bulls probably just behind and very close in 7th. And then 8th, I would go Haas. 9th, Williams. Oh, no, 9th, Aston Martin, rather. And then 10th, Williams. And then, last of all, Cadillac. But yeah, the midfield, in terms of who's going to win the midfield fight, it's between Audi, Alpine, Racing Bulls, who are all within a 10th or 2/10ths, probably at most, of each other. And it's going to be great to see as well who wins that fight today and who ends up, in what positions in the top 10 if Liam Lawson and the other Red Bull cannot make the top 10. But yeah, that's what I think the pecking order is. So here are my predictions for qualifying, pretty much based on that. Kimi Antonelli, I think, will keep it all together, and I think he will just about take what would be a very, very important pole position for his championship and his season. George Russell, I think, will just about get second, so I think it'll be Mercedes 1-2, but it'll be very close still on lap time between Antonelli, Russell, Norris, Leclerc, as you can see. Norris, I think, will be only a 10th away from pole. In 3rd, and then Leclerc, I'm going in 4th. Piastri has been lagging behind a bit his teammates, so I think he'll be in 5th. Max Verstappen will just about nick ahead of Lewis Hamilton in 6th. Hamilton then 7th, and then I'm going the same back end of the top 10 like it was in sprint qualifying. Gasly 8th, Bortoletto 9th, and Lindblad in P10. So that's my top 10 for qualifying. Let me know in the chat, guys, whether you agree or disagree. As we've got less than an hour to go now until qualifying. We've got about 45 minutes to go until the session begins at Zandvoort. Again, it should be a dry session. I've looked at the weather, and it says that it's going to get, or not going to get, drier, but as the day goes on, the chance of rain diminishes, essentially. But it is not very warm, considering the summer we've had here in Western Europe. This summer, it's been crazy, the heat we've had. And here in the UK as well, the temperature has really dropped off. Yesterday it was only like 17 degrees, which is probably the coldest day we've had here in the southwest of England since, early May, probably. Again, it's absolutely mental, the weather we've had. Thankfully for all the, crops and the grass and all of that across the country, we're now seeing rain, or some rain to keep things alive and keep things a bit closer to normal. But yeah, I wouldn't say unseasonably cold for Zandvoort, because Zandvoort does tend to be one of the colder European races. Obviously, it's by the beach, and Holland generally doesn't have great weather. They're very similar to us, actually, here in the UK in terms of the weather they tend to have. So, yeah, it's not really a surprise. The cooler temperatures, let's say. But it is a welcome, I wouldn't say a surprise, but it is very much welcome, the colder temperatures that we are getting at the minute. I mean, it's still, around 20 degrees, a day, which is still good enough. But, yeah, thankfully, it has cooled down a lot. Because, we've had literally in the UK, I think 5 heat waves, which is completely abnormal for us to have that many heat waves in a year. We were averaging like 1 heat wave every 2 weeks. It was crazy, quite frankly. And I'm also another reason I'm thankful it's cooler is because now I can do these live streams and not feel like I'm going to die whilst doing it, and not be sweating absolute buckets the entire time. So that's a good thing. But yeah, we're here with 45 minutes to go, or just under 45 minutes to go until qualifying. Let me know, guys, in the chat, what do you think is going to happen in qualifying today? Of course, the poll is still running in the chat, so you can let me know there, obviously, what you think is going to happen. But before I go any further, just want to say quickly, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Of course, we do plenty of watch-along content throughout the season. And make sure to smash a like button as well. Let's try and get as many likes as we can on this stream. And one thing I will do is just have a quick drink before I read any comments out, and then I'll come back to you guys soon. So I'll just mute myself, and then I'll be back in a second. Right, so that should be a bit better for my throat. Before I read out any comments in the chat, though, I just wanted to quickly do a channel update, because of course this is the first live stream I've done in a month, and obviously the last time I did a channel update I was going on about my summer break content. Summer break content is all done. All the videos are on the channel, so if you haven't seen any of my summer break content, make sure to go and check it out. There are 4 videos. Make sure to go and check all those videos out on the channel. They'll all be obviously on the videos tab on my YouTube channel page. So yeah, make sure to go check all those out. But in terms of the plan moving forward, so yeah, I finished my uni semester 2 weeks ago. The next uni semester doesn't start for another month, so we've actually got quite a bit of time off in terms of from uni until then. Obviously it's a 2-year course I'm doing. If you're wondering what I'm doing, if you forgot or you don't know, I'm doing a master's in screenwriting. Yeah, course started last September. It's a 2-year course, so we're now halfway through. Only got 2 more semesters left. Got the next one finishes in December, and then the final one is a final major project where we get to write whatever we want to write, and it goes on for like 7 or 8 months. I think finishes next July, August. So yeah, the next uni semester doesn't start till September, the 20th or 21st, something like that. So between now and then, obviously, I will be, mainly doing or focusing on the channel. I haven't done any work, like I said earlier in this stream. I haven't done any work. So, since I finished my uni semester 2 weeks ago, I've not done anything except, this stream today is the first bit of work I've done in 2 weeks. And once I've done this stream and the podcast that I'm going to do on Monday, I'm going to have the rest of August off as well. In terms of next month, of course, we've got 3 F1 races. The first one is the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Very likely I will be doing both a qualifying and race watch along for that Grand Prix weekend. Not yet confirmed, but again, very likely that I will do both a qualifying and race watch along. Hopefully, Niblo, my co-commentator, usually on watch alongs, hopefully, he should be joining us for that. And then the week after Monza is the first ever race in Madrid, which will be the Spanish Grand Prix. Now, for that Grand Prix, I will only be doing a qualifying stream. Absolutely no chance am I doing a race stream for that Madrid race. And the reason is because the track is absolutely terrible. One of the worst race tracks I've ever seen in my entire life, that Madrid circuit. So I will not be doing a race watch along and wasting my time, essentially, on that, on that Sunday. So for the Madrid race, just a qualifying stream, no race watch along. And then the final race in September, on the final weekend of September, is the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Baku. In terms of the plan for that race, I don't know yet. So, yeah, I'll let you guys know when we get, I'll probably let you guys know in 2 or 3 weeks from now as to, what I probably will do for that particular Grand Prix. But as you can see, next month we've got plenty of races. So mainly the focus is going to be on the races. There is probably a video or two that I might upload as well to the channel during September, especially with the time that I've got away from uni. So I might I might put out a couple videos. I'll let you guys know, of course, if I decide to and what videos they will be. I think there's one video that I am going to do, which will probably come out, say, after the Madrid race, say in between the Madrid and Azerbaijan race. So yeah, I'll probably upload a video then, and then maybe another one, we'll see. But yeah, there's definitely a recorded video coming to the channel in September, along with all those live streams that I'm inevitably going to do next month as well. So in terms of content, next month, 90% of it is going to be streams and podcast episodes, but there should be, again, at least one recorded video, maybe two. And if those recorded videos will very likely come out in between the Madrid and Azerbaijan race. And the reason that is because, of course, there is a 2-week break in between those particular races. So, yeah, that's the plan moving forward until the end of September. And, yeah, I'll let you guys know more details when we go forward and get to the next Grand Prix. Sorry for muting myself again, but just had to clear my throat. Anyway, yeah, let's read your comments in the chat, and then I'll make sure to post a link of the stream out again soon. And yeah, sorry if I sound a bit coughy and stuffy, but yeah, because it's got colder, it's increased the those type of cold like symptoms. Anyway, good to see you all. Good to see everyone in the chat. Astro, Sarah Gara, G Walker, Mateo. Yeah, good to see you all. Astro asking when the year of the Hormuz Strait echoes the year of COVID as far as the F1 calendar is concerned. True. G Walker saying good day to all the F owners around the globe. How about Max locked in with Red Bull? Love it totally. That's one thing actually I did want to talk about in this what do you call it? One thing I did want to talk about in this build up to qualifying, because of course that is the big news that we received earlier this week. News that shocked most people, that Max Verstappen is staying at Red Bull and has extended his contract until the end of 2030. Who saw that coming? I mean, maybe some people, but I think most people thought at least he was going to leave Red Bull. Even if he didn't go to anyone and he, had a sabbatical or even retired. I think not everyone, but again, most people thought he was stepping away from Red Bull to do, something else. To see him signing on and staying is, I wouldn't say baffling. It's not that type of decision, but it is a shock. It is absolutely a shock. No doubt about it. In terms of why I think he's made this decision, I mean, to be honest, I haven't thought about it enough. The one thing, though, that I did see from what he said regarding his contract renewal with Red Bull was that really interested me, was that he was more likely to retire than join another team. That really surprised me. So yeah, that was a genuine surprise, because I was, as you guys know, I made a video about it during the summer break. A special video talking about why I think Max Verstappen should join Mercedes. Even mentioned in that video, why maybe he'd want to also join McLaren, which was a rumor. Sky Sports F1 reported that he, negotiated with McLaren, but ultimately decided to stay at Red Bull. Very surprising to hear him say that. Is it true that, that he was more likely to retire than change teams? Maybe. I mean, Max, I don't think he's someone who really plays the game really that much. When I say plays the game in terms of playing the PR media type game where you basically just lie, or lie by omission when you speak to the media. Max tends to say what he thinks and speak pretty truthfully. But it was just, very surprising to hear that. But yeah, let me just post a link, by the way, of the stream back out one more time, as we're not too far away now from the beginning of qualifying. Come join us here to watch along qualifying at Zandvoort. But yeah, I'm massively surprised that he's decided to stay at Red Bull. But that's what he's decided. He's going to be at Red Bull for another 4 seasons after this one. Will he win another championship as a Red Bull driver? It really, I think, depends on next year, because these regulations are going to be around pretty much until Max's contract comes to an end. So if Red Bull next year can take a big step forward and be a lot closer to the front, then I think that at least proves that, they can still fight for the championship. Whether they'll win or whether Max can win the championship or not, it's a different story. But yeah, again, still, very much surprised by that decision, but that's the decision he's made. Also disappointed because I was so hopeful he was going to go to Mercedes, because I want to see the best drivers, as we all do, the best drivers in the same team with each other. And I was really hoping we were going to see Verstappen and Antonelli in the same car. But yeah. And I think, that video that I was on about, in terms of the next recorded video that I'm going to upload, that's what it's going to center on, is why has Max Verstappen decided to stay at Red Bull? Because really, I think that's been the story of the season off the track is, will Max, or what is Max going to do? So I will continue to focus on it. And yeah, that's what that at least one recorded video in September is going to be about. It's going to be, why has Max Verstappen decided to stay at Red Bull, and why was he unable to go to another team? Did he seriously consider retiring? We'll get into all of that. So yeah, that will be a video that I will upload probably, middle of September, probably a few days after the Madrid race. So yeah, that is a video heading your way. Astra saying Oscar had pole fastest lap and race win here last year. Indeed he did. Hoping he manages to repeat that this weekend. Reckon he can do it. I don't think he can. Even though McLaren have got a fast enough car to win this weekend, Piastri just isn't in the same level of form as he was a year ago. Piastri was at pretty much I won't say peak of his powers, but in peak form. The best version, really, of Oscar Piastri that you're going to get was what we saw this time last year. And yeah, he pulled off a perfect weekend, took the race win. Obviously, his teammate didn't finish the race. And after this particular race last year, I thought the championship was done. I thought it was won. I thought Piastri was world champion. And of course, somehow, not only did he lose the championship, he didn't even finish in second. He finished third. A lot happened and changed in those final few races. But yeah, the car is good enough to win, but with Oscar, is he performing well enough right now to win? I'm not sure he is. He hasn't been on the same pace as Lando since the Austrian Grand Prix, and that was, 2 months ago? Astrasi, no race Watchalong tomorrow night then, Chazza? Nah. Like I said, because this track just doesn't produce good racing. It just doesn't, unfortunately. And yeah, the next race Watchalong very likely will be the next race, which is Monza in 2 weeks' time. Of course, I'll announce official details a couple days before the race weekend begins for the Italian Grand Prix. But yeah, that is very likely the plan. Is I'm going to do both the qualifying and race watch along for the Italian Grand Prix. And normally, of course, we do race watch along to Monza because it is a fantastic Grand Prix event and normally a pretty good race. Anyway, thoughts on Lawson and Yuki so far this weekend? Lawson, yeah, just hasn't been on the pace. I mean, the Red Bull car has been pretty slow this weekend, but Lawson looks like he's about a second a lap slower than his teammate, which is nowhere near good enough. But we've already seen Lawson in the Red Bull, and we already saw that he wasn't good enough. So is it really a surprise? Tsunoda, though, already proving that he is still good enough to be in Formula One, because he's come straight back in and he's almost, on the pace of his teammate, at least for this weekend, Arvid Lindblad. So yeah. Hello to Brabham. Good to see you. Astra saying, I wish Max would retire either or change teams, just personally. Brabham saying, nah, his contract will be breakable. And saying also he's definitely going through a low period. I think he's admittedly struggling with this year's car a bit. I think what he's struggling with is, I mean, one, I think it is a bit of motivation, because these cars are so dissatisfying to drive from the point of view as a racing driver. And, on top of that, the car is slow. So, even if these cars are dissatisfying, at least if it's a good car, a car that, can put him in winning positions, then at least he'd still have that. But it's the double whammy of, he doesn't like driving these types of cars, plus his car is also shit, pretty much. So, yeah, I'm not surprised that he's, demotivated. What pisses me off is people will criticize Max for, oh, he's just moaning because, he's got a bad car, and, oh, he needs to just get on with it, and, he can't have the best car all the time. Max, I mean, went through years of having cars that were not only slower, but miles off the pace of, Mercedes and Ferrari at times, who were fighting for the championship back, when he was teammates with Daniel Ricciardo at Red Bull. So it's not like Max has had dominant cars, championship winning cars in his whole career. He's only had championship winning cars for 4 or 5 years of his 10-year, 11-year career. So in terms of the performance level of the car, I don't think it's, obviously he's not happy about it, but I don't think it's a massive reason why he's, considering taking a sabbatical or whatever. I think most of it is, again, these types of cars he just doesn't enjoy driving, which is absolutely fair enough, because, again, from a driver's perspective, it is so dissatisfying. But, remember all the other greats we've had in Formula One when they've had to drive really bad cars. Obviously, Fernando Alonso has been massively depressed. This year, back in the McLaren Honda days, he sounded like a dead dog at times. With how depressed he was, rightly so, in terms of, his depression, because he was given a car that was so pathetic, quite frankly. But also, Lewis Hamilton. Let's not forget Lewis Hamilton. In the first half of the 2009 season, Hamilton was absolutely miserable. And rightly so, because the McLaren that first half of the season was one of the worst McLaren cars of all time. So, when the absolute all-time greats, or great, not even all-time greats, but just great drivers in general, when they get given cars that are so far below, or quite a bit below where they should be, they're going to be depressed. They're going to be down. That's just how it goes. Astro giving his prediction for qualifying: Piastri for pole, and then Max, Leclerc, Hamilton, Norris, Russell, Lawson, Tsunoda, Bortoleto, Hulkenberg. Astra saying, I'd love to see Max change teams or quit, preferably both. Max is not gonna. I know he again he said, "Oh, I'm more likely to retire than change teams," but I never genuinely felt that he was gonna leave Formula One. I think it would take a few years of misery to drive him out. I really do think that. Um, I mean, if you look at Alonso, for example, in terms of his, when he left Formula One back in, at the end of 2018, and he was out of Formula One for a couple years, he went through what, like 4 seasons straight of just absolute pure misery, driving shit boxes, and that's eventually what drove him to the point of saying, fuck it, I'm done, at least for then. And then obviously he came back anyway, 3 years later with Alpine. But yeah, let's say the Red Bull is a few tenths off the pace and not able to even win a race for the next 2-3 years, then I think you could see a scenario where Max decides, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna retire or just take a break from F1 for a couple years. That's what it would take. He's not gonna take a break from F1 just because of one bad season. No way. Absolutely no way. But we're just looking. I'm just looking at the TV broadcast on Sky F1, and they're just showing Max's car and talking about him. Actually, yeah, Max's car looks like it's pretty much good to go. As we are just over 15 minutes away from the beginning of qualifying. Before we get into the session, though, let's do a quick roundup of the teams and go through just where they should be at coming into this session. The Mercedes, not by much, but I do think just about they've got the best car. Both drivers, when their cars are fully operational, no damage and all of that, looking competitive and good. And Mercedes, I think very well could lock out the front row, which obviously is what I predicted for qualifying earlier on. In terms of who takes pole, it's going to be very interesting because Antonelli, without damage, you would still bet on him to be on pole. But George Russell having a great return to action now that we've come back from the summer break, mentally in a much better place, and momentum-wise has had a great weekend so far. Will he keep that up, or will Antonelli spoil his party? That's what we're going to find out at Mercedes in the in this qualifying session coming up very soon. But in terms of, if both drivers nail their laps, I think Mercedes are on pole. I really do. Ferrari, the least likely, I would say, of getting pole position out of the front 3 teams. And the reason I would say that is because what do you call it? The reason I would say that is because purely of the engine side. Because McLaren, even though, Ferrari also through the corners and the middle sector are looking, very quick, just like McLaren are. McLaren have got that engine advantage in the first sector and the final sector compared to Ferrari, where, in those parts of the lap, it is mostly flat out, especially in the final sector, when you get through the banking and, that run to the finish line. And that's really what is pegging Ferrari back to an extent to the point where they are looking the least likely just about team to end up actually getting pole position. But as you saw in the sprint, they were pretty quick, and they were actually, over the course of the sprint race, slightly the quickest team in the sprint. And I think ultimately this session, I mean, of course, if they get pole position, that's great. But they need to really just make sure that they set themselves up to properly fight for the win tomorrow. And the only way they can do that is to be on the front row of the grid. If Leclerc qualifies third again, yeah, still a good result, still puts him in a good position. But can you win the Dutch Grand Prix from third on the grid? I'm not sure you can, unless you have a big advantage in terms of a much better start of the race, or some sort of big strategy advantage, which I don't think Ferrari tomorrow will have. So yeah, I think Ferrari have got to be front row at least if they want to win tomorrow. I just don't see them, and I think the same really goes for McLaren. I just don't see them winning the race if they haven't got a car at least on the front row of the grid. If they want to win, they've got to at least have that. Red Bull will be the slowest of the front four teams. We'll see if Max gets on the third row. Realistically, he should be able to get on the third row of the grid if, all the drivers for the front three teams do their job. But we'll see if Max, like he did in sprint qualifying with Lewis Hamilton having a poor lap at the end of SQ3, or sprint qualifying, whatever you want to call it. We'll see if Max can pick up the pieces once again. But McLaren, just like I said with Ferrari, if they want to win tomorrow, they've got to be at least on the front row. But absolutely, they can take pole position. As I said earlier, though, can they be quick enough in the first sector and the final sector to keep close enough to Mercedes to where, once that advantage that they have over Mercedes in the middle sector kicks in, overall, they can be quicker for the lap. Can they manage that? Will they make some setup changes? We'll have to see. Lando Norris is very much in form. He's performing brilliantly at the minute. Is Lando. He's been one of the top few drivers, especially in the last few races. He's really doing well, is Lando. Hopefully Oscar can get in there as well. Again, as mentioned earlier, Piastri took pole and really dominated the weekend last year. Is this his chance to get his first win of the year, and a win maybe that he could have got in Hungary had he had not been screwed over so badly? Now into the midfield, Audi look good. Not good enough to get both cars into the top 10, but I think if Gabriel Bortoleto keeps up his speed, he should be in the top 10. Haas, still way too slow, unfortunately. Racing Bulls, not quite as quick as they were previously, with Audi and Alpine improving, but still quick enough to get a car in the top 10. Arvid Lindblad should be in the top 10. Yuki Tsunoda, as time goes on during the weekend, you'd imagine he would get stronger and more competitive compared to his teammate, but ultimately, will he be ahead of Lindblad? I just don't see it. Alpine, watch out for Pierre Gasly. Sorry about that, clear my throat again. Watch out for Pierre Gasly. He's consistently one of the best drivers at this circuit. Been on the podium here before, and for the Alpine team. And plus, Alpine have improved their car. So yeah, watch out for Gasly. If Lawson in the Red Bull doesn't make the top 10, Gasly, I think, is pretty likely to finish up on the fourth row of the grid in 8th place. Williams are absolutely terrible. Their car is basically a truck at this point. It is so heavy, so slow, a complete waste of space. Aston Martin, obviously, they are better than they were a couple months ago, where they were, as far as I'm concerned, the worst team ever. But still, miles off the pace. But should be quick enough to where Fernando Alonso has a chance of getting into Q2. Whether he will or not, we'll have to find out. And Cadillac, now that Aston Martin have improved, unfortunately, have the slowest car. Is a reminder what my prediction is. Antonelli, I think, will take pole from Russell second, so I think it'll be Mercedes 1, 2. And then Norris third, Leclerc fourth, Piastri fifth, Verstappen sixth, Hamilton seventh, Gasly eighth, Bortoletto ninth, and Arvid Lindblad, I think, will finish in P10. As we have got only, 8 minutes, I think, to go until qualifying begins. Let me just wait for the next minute to tick over. As, of course, make sure to keep voting on that poll in the chat. Who do you think will take pole position? Will it be Kimi Antonelli, George Russell, Lando Norris, or Charles Leclerc? Out of those four, who do you think takes pole position? And of course, make sure to smash the like button on this stream. Hello, Rooks. Good to see you. And yeah, another, 7.5 minutes until qualifying is underway. Astro saying I'm pretty sure. Oh no, he's responding to Looney Classics, who says, I don't think Toto wants Max anymore, given how good Kimi is. I think from Toto's perspective, that's the only thing I can think of as to why he's not signed Verstappen, is because he wants to now build the team around Antonelli. Which makes sense, because Antonelli is a generational driver. Antonelli, I think, will win the championship this year and very much could be a, by the time we get to 2030, when Max's contract ends, Antonelli could be a 2 or 3-time world champion by then. And remember, Kimi is still 19 years old. He turns 20 on Wednesday, does Kimi, I believe. So he will not be the first ever teenage world champion, but he will be by far the youngest world champion in Formula One history if he wins the championship this year. But that's the only reason I can see, because why would you stay loyal to George Russell? I just don't see why, especially with the way Russell's performed this year. And then, Astro responding to that, saying, pretty sure Toto would take Max if we could get him. I'd just like to see Max face a real inter-team challenge and rival run in a car and team built around him in a very number two. I mean, maybe Toto was desperate to get Max before he became certain that Antonelli would be his new number one, or new Max Verstappen. So, it's something to consider. But like I said, I will do a video on why Max Verstappen has decided to stay at Red Bull, and we'll go through all the theories and all of that. So, don't worry, that's a video that will be coming your way in the next month. Rooks also notifying us that in regards to Alpine, only Gasly's car has the upgrades fitted, which is why Colapinto's been off the pace. Anyway, we are less than 5 minutes away from the start of qualifying, and the F1 intro now begins to play. So I think it is time. And let's get into a final couple details as usual before lights out, before the session begins. After the sprint race, Kimi Antonelli still comfortably in the lead, and even further in the lead after the sprint race. He's now 53 points clear of Lewis Hamilton in the championship. George Russell in third, only 3 points behind Lewis Hamilton. Leclerc then in fourth, 11 points clear of Lando Norris, who continues to have a very good season as of late. in terms of the last few races. In 5th, Max Verstappen up to 6th, obviously after the last race where he finished 2nd and Piastri didn't score a point. Piastri 7th. Isaac Hadjar not racing this weekend because of a wrist injury. He is in 8th. Liam Lawson taking his place and Tsunoda taking Lawson's place at Racing Bulls. Gasly scored the final point in the sprint, which means he goes back up ahead of Liam Lawson in the championship, but they are level on 43 points. Can Pierre Gasly get into the top 10 today and set himself up for a points finish tomorrow? And can Kimi Antonelli take a big step towards a maiden world championship by taking pole position, which is very, very important here at Zandvoort? Can he do it today? Let's find out. And Q1 will be underway in about 2.5 minutes' time. And as you can see on the left-hand side, Hadjar has been replaced by Tsunoda. As Q1 is a 18-minute-long session. And in terms of who will get knocked out in Q1, obviously the 2 Cadillacs. Lance Stroll, you would imagine, very likely. And then one of the Williamses and one of the Haases as well. I think it's pretty likely, given how slow those 2 teams look. But really what we're looking at here in Q1 is, can Fernando Alonso get into Q2 like he did in Hungary? We will find out. Another thing to look out for, by the way, is, of course, the pole position time of sprint qualifying yesterday was a 1 minute 11.5. I don't see it being improved on that lap time really by that much. I think pole position today is probably going to be about the same. If it is quicker, though, if they do go quicker than pole position yesterday, I think the quickest you'll see is a 1:11.2 or a 1:11.3. You have to remember, there has been some rain overnight and in the morning and even after the sprint finished. So the rubber laid down has been washed away. So the track is in a bit of a muddle in terms of the grip level. So, yeah, I think a mid 1 minute 11 is what we need to look out for in terms of what probably will be the pole position time. As all the cars pretty much coming out of the pits. The reason them all coming out is because there is rain in the area, but it's not going to hit the track. I've looked at the forecast, and yeah, the chance of rain, as I said, diminishes as the afternoon wears on. As a packed house at Zandvoort doing the Mexican wave. And the first car on the end of the pit lane is an Audi. I wonder if it's Nico Hulkenberg, because Hulkenberg, he came in the pits and we thought retired from the sprint race, and then he came out with 2 laps to go. And was, 13 laps down. So, clearly fixed whatever issue was in the Audi car. As qualifying has now begun, we're 20 seconds in. I'll sync up the timer at the 17-minute mark as the Cadillacs are just getting their way onto track. Just squeezing past the pit wall there. And we're now on board on the TV broadcast with Arvid Lindblad having a good debut season in Formula One. As Max Verstappen leaves his garage the home driver. And there you go. 17 minutes to go in Q1. Verstappen finished second here last year, second the year before. Obviously led in 2024 for quite a few laps before Lando Norris overtook him and then absolutely pounded him into the dirt. But Max has won this race 3 times previously. And if you look at every weekend we've had here at Zandvoort, you can't ever accuse Max Verstappen of not performing well enough in front of his home fans. He has delivered the absolute best possible result every single time that he's raced here in Formula One. As we are looking at Oliver Bearman on a outlap, I'm pretty sure. Actually, no, I don't think it's an outlap. I think it's more of a secondary warm-up lap. One thing we did see in sprint qualifying is second warm-up laps. What I mean by that is normally drivers will do an out lap, then they'll do their push lap, and then do an in lap to the pits. But because of the quite a bit cooler temperatures this weekend at Zandvoort, it's only the air temperature is only 17, 18 degrees Celsius, which is pretty cold considering some of the venues that Formula One goes to. They're having to do an additional warm-up lap to get the tyres properly up to temperature. And we have seen, because of the cooler temperatures, these tyres have been able to last long enough for 2 push laps. That's one thing to keep your eye on. As Yuki Tsunoda, 1:14.2, which is pretty slow, I must say. But he goes quickest. First lap time on the board. Arvid Lindblad goes second, half a second or 0.4 down. So yeah, these are not very quick lap times. Lindblad in sprint qualifying did I think 1:12.5 or 1:12.6, so a couple seconds off the pace. As we're looking at Oliver Bearman on the soft tyre, on a better lap so far than Tsunoda was doing for his lap. But he's now matched Tsunoda through the middle sector. He'll probably end up second because the Racing Bulls is quicker than the Haas. As now Bearman, thankfully, is going to get a very nice toe. No, he's not because he's coming in the pits. So there you go. Bearman gives up on that lap. There's Valtteri Bottas here. And Sergio Perez both on laps, both going pretty slowly. They're lapping after the first 2 sectors, about second off the pace of Tsunoda, as Lance Stroll goes third. Valtteri Bottas goes fourth. And Sergio Perez goes fifth. So, yeah, let me just update that. By the way, I've now fixed my running order thing. I can now put Perez above Ocon for once. Literally, in the first 11 races, I wasn't able to do that. And, was able to fix it. It was actually quite simple of a fix. Fernando Alonso goes third. These lap times, though, are very slow. As Alex Albon goes fourth. And now Lewis Hamilton goes quickest with a 1:13.4. Liam Lawson is a 1:13.4 as well, but goes slower than Hamilton. And then Max Verstappen third. Charles Leclerc in 4th. As here comes a McLaren to start a lap, or well, he's just done an additional warm-up lap, and now he starts a proper lap as Lando going a bit wide there through turn 1, which is named Tarzan. He was having problems at turn 1 in the sprint race. He was carrying a bit of a wider line. The McLaren just not getting in on the front end. And the reason they're quick this weekend is more so the high-speed corners. The rear end of the McLaren really sticking nicely, but the front end into a couple of these slower corners just not quite getting in. And yeah, it was affecting them in the sprint earlier. As Carlos Sainz has gone up to 8th. Lando Norris, purple middle sector. Piastri, purple first sector, miles quicker than Lewis Hamilton in the first sector, as Norris nearly touching the grass on the entry or through the banking of the final corner. Norris to the line, 1:13.0, goes quickest. That is a pretty good first run for Lando. Piastri, though, is on a really stellar lap. 2/10 up on his teammate. As Piastri through the banking, the pole position man and race winner of last year, comes to the line. And he does a 1:12.8. That is a very quick lap time for the first lap of Q1. Very quick lap time. So McLaren and Piastri looking very strong. Antonelli only 3rd. George Russell goes 2nd on a 1:12.9. So Mercedes and McLaren both looking pretty good and very strong so far. So Russell in 2nd, Antonelli is 4th, and then below Antonelli you got Hamilton, Lawson, Verstappen, Leclerc, Tsunoda, Lindblad. Fernando Alonso currently is in 11th place, but that's because Hulkenberg, Behrman, Ocon, Bortoleto, Gasly, Colapinto have not set lap times. Here we go. Esteban Ocon goes up to 9th. As his teammate, Oliver Behrman, coming through the banking. And to the line, he goes 9th on a 1:14.1, which is a good lap time, especially if they want to be getting into Q2. As Nico Hulkenberg. What a lap. 1:13.3 and he goes 5th. Out of nowhere from the Hulkster. As Leclerc has just improved. I'm going up to 4th place. Tsunoda's improved on a 2nd lap. I'm going up to 7th. Max Verstappen is up to 6th. As Arvid Lindblad goes 8th. Pierre Gasly finally sets a time and goes only 12th, which is surprising. Colapinto with the, well, not even without the upgrades, goes ahead of him into 12th position. As Lance Stroll goes up to 15th. As Sorry, Carlos Sainz improves out of the drop zone up to 14th. Alonso goes 12th. 1:13.6. That's a brilliant lap time from Fernando Alonso. And you know what? That might already be good enough to get him through with nearly 6.5 minutes to go. That's Alexander Albon, a driver who qualified, I think, third here in 2023, goes 14th. Williams at serious risk of being eliminated, no doubt about that, as somebody has climbed out of the drop zone. Who is it? I'm trying to see. It is. Has anyone? No, I don't think anyone has actually. Oh no, that's what happened. Lance Stroll dropped to the bottom. He's had his lap time deleted. As Bortoletto only goes 17th. His teammate Hulkenberg's nearly a second quicker than him, up in 7th place, and Bortoletto only 17th. As that's a replay of Lewis Hamilton, going off at turn 1, locking the inside front heavily into turn 1 and going into the gravel trap. Thankfully, he rode through the gravel trap, went to the escape road, which is in between the gravel trap and the barrier. He got back on track, but that is not good. And Lewis Hamilton currently down in 10th. I'm pretty sure, though, Hamilton has already done a good enough lap time to get into Q2. So don't worry, Hamilton fans or Ferrari fans. I think Hamilton is all good. But everyone pretty much is back in the pits with just under 5 minutes to go in Q1. Bortoletto is 17th on a 1:13.9, I believe. And to get into Q2, you need to do, I'd say, a 1:13.5 or better to get into Q2. So anybody from Alonso in 12th down is at risk of being eliminated. Lawson in 11th is the lowest placed driver that I would say is safe. But yeah, Alonso 12th, I think, is the highest placed driver that's at risk. So the drivers that are currently on their way through to Q2 but are not safe: Alonso, Colapinto, Albon, Gasly, Sainz. Gasly, real big surprise that he's in 15th and in the mix to be eliminated possibly. And even more surprising is Bortoletto in the drop zone. As we can see, George Russell still in the garage, and there's no point really for Mercedes to send their cars out again. They are comfortably on their way. As we're looking at Lando Norris, who's on an additional warm-up lap. He's ahead of is it Cadillac? But the Cadillac behind him is also we're not also on an additional warm-up lap, but he's on an out lap. As Gasly has been noted for an unsafe release. I haven't seen the unsafe release, so I can't tell you whether he's going to get or be in trouble for it. As looks like actually Mercedes are going to send their cars out, surprisingly. I was thinking they weren't going to send their cars out, but yeah, just over 2 minutes to go, they're sending them out. they will have probably just about enough time to get a lap in, as long as they don't need an additional warm-up lap, as Nico Hulkenberg's on a final flying lap. Possibly. And he's in a purple middle sector. The Audi flying. As he gets a great tow from the Ferrari of Hamilton through the banking to the line. And he goes 6th. So Hulkenberg definitely is through to Q2. And hopefully can keep up this speed and be joined by his teammate. We're now looking at Lando Norris in 3rd. If Norris can do a mid 1 minute 12 with this lap, that would be a really good benchmark at this point of the session. And he's looking good. He's a 10th up on Piastri after the first 2 sectors. Pierre Gasly improves massively up to 5th. He's through for sure now to Q2. As Lance Stroll improves up to 15th, but I don't think that's going to be good enough, as Lando Norris only goes 2nd. Bottas stays in 21st. Perez stays 22nd. No surprise there. Arvid Lindblad goes 5th. Lewis Hamilton, big improvement. He goes 2nd on a 1:12.6. Piastri has improved as well to a 1:12.6, which is something I've just noticed. That's a brilliant lap time for Piastri. He is looking good. As Tsunoda up to 7th. 6th and 7th. 6-7 for Racing Bulls. Albon goes 15th. Is that enough? I'm not sure it is. As Bortoletto goes up to 10th. The checkered flag has now fallen. These are your final laps. As Colapinto goes 13th. Carlos Sainz currently in 20th. Only goes 17th. He is out in Q1. Lance Stroll is out. He's in 19th. As Albon is currently through, as Antonelli goes up to 5th. Fernando Alonso is currently down in 18th, and no sign that he is on a quicker lap or not. And Oliver Behrman, no sign from him either that he's on a quicker lap. That would be a disaster for Behrman if he's 20th. As Liam Lawson, already safe, but improves his lap time anyway to 1:13.3. Well, it looks like that's it for Q1. And we're looking at Carlos Sainz, who is out. And yep, Alonso has pitted and Behrman has pitted. So disappointing for Oliver Behrman, 20th place. That is, yeah, very bad, very poor to be out-qualified by Ocon. But there you go. That's Q1 over and done with, guys. Let's go through your drivers that have made it through to Q2. Piastri, Hamilton, Norris, Russell, Antonelli, Leclerc, Lindblad, Tsunoda, Gasly, Bortoletto, Hulkenberg, Verstappen, Colapinto, Lawson, Ocon, Albon, all making it through. And knocked out in Q1, Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll, Oliver Behrman, Valtteri Bottas, and Sergio Perez. And Q2 will be underway in, 2-3 minutes from now. And of course, we'll knock out the next 6 slowest cars. In terms of who was knocked out, Sainz will be definitely disappointed to be out-qualified by Albon, given that Sainz has had the better season. Alonso will be disappointed. I think Aston Martin could have got through there to Q2 with him at least. 18th and 19th for Aston Martin, though, is around about what, the best they could do anyway. So, it's not really that much of a disappointment. Oliver Behrman 20th, though, that is, for me, the biggest disappointment. To be out-qualified by Ocon and be 20th, what would have been last on the grid a year ago, is very poor. And then, Cadillac at the very back, which is, not a surprise. Good to see, though, Valtteri Bottas out-qualifying Sergio Perez. He has improved in the last few races, and he's kept it up. So, good to see. But now, we are going to knock out the next 6 slowest cars. Ocon and Albon definitely will be knocked out in 15th, 16th. The only thing to decide there is who will be in 15th. Colapinto will be knocked out as well because he doesn't have the upgrades that Gasly does. So, really, for 11th, 12th, and 13th, it's between the 2 Racing Bulls, the 2 Audis, the Alpine of Gasly, and the Red Bull of Liam Lawson. That's really the drivers and teams that we are looking at. G Walker says Ferrari are hot this season, not hit. Along with their crew, Leclerc has a talent that can make it happen in this current era. I mean, we've seen in the last few races, absolutely he can. Since he won at Silverstone, Leclerc has been absolutely brilliant. But the few races before that, he was terrible. So, the reason Leclerc's not fighting for the championship, the reason Leclerc's not fighting for the championship, sorry, I was just seeing something with Gabriel Bortoleto, him getting angry about having a snap of oversteer for some reason. The reason he's not fighting for the championship is because of those few races he had where he was awful. If he had been keeping up and pretty much, had been level with Hamilton in terms of performance through that period, he would be in the championship fight right now. But he's not, because he decided to go completely walkabout for 5 races. Remember, he didn't score a point in Monaco or Barcelona. Only scored 4 points in Austria. I mean, he was just terrible. And ultimately, that's why Charles Leclerc will not be world champion this year, because he just couldn't be consistent enough. Had a really terrible few races, whether that was down to the brakes that he talked about earlier in the season or what. I don't know exactly, but yeah, awful. Absolutely awful. And it's cost him dearly. As the green light goes on, and Q2 is underway. And the first car on track is, I believe, Max Verstappen, someone who does usually, and it is, he does usually go out first in Q2. And the reason is because Red Bull and Max like to set a real good banker lap for Q3 at this point of the session. As Liam Lawson still in the Red Bull garage. For Max, though, what would be a good lap time? I mean, if he somehow thinks delusion, if he's deluded enough, rather, to think that he's in the fight for pole position. As there you go, 14 minutes to go in Q2. If he's deluded enough to think he's in the fight for pole position, then he would need to do, at this point of qualifying, he'd need to do a mid 1 minute 12. So if he could do a 1:12.5, 1:12.6, then that would be a brilliant lap at this part of qualifying. But he looks like he's doing an additional warm-up lap to me. And yeah, he is. Pretty sure he is. But if the Red Bull is as quick in this session as I predicted, then he's probably going to end up doing, at least in this part of qualifying, to start with, his first lap will probably be more like a 13.0 or a 1:12.9 at best. But we'll see. But at this point, point of qualifying, by the end of Q2, if you are McLaren, Ferrari, or Mercedes, you want to be lapping, say, 1 minute 12.0, maybe a 1 minute 11.9 at best. That's the lap time to look out for. And in terms of getting into Q2, if you're under the 1 minute 13 barrier, you will be into Q3, 100%. I think the slowest lap time that might make it in is maybe a 1:13.1, 1:13.2. So we'll keep our eye on that as Nico Hulkenberg does a 1:12.8. Brilliant first lap. And if I'm right, then that is already good enough to get him in. As George Russell, what a lap he has just done. A 1 minute 11.9 with his first lap in Q2. That is incredible. And he's gone 0.4 of a second quicker than Antonelli. Where's he found that from? That was... wow, that was amazing. That level of pace straight away in Q2. As Max Verstappen, what is he doing on his lap? He's about half a second down as, well, you'd say as expected, but he's on course for what I said would be a very good lap, a mid 1 minute 12, but compared to what Russell's just done, it doesn't look very good compared to him. As he comes to the line, Verstappen, and yeah, he goes third, nearly 7/10 off a 1:12.6. It's a good lap, but that lap from Russell makes everything else look terrible. Mr. Saturday has absolutely turned up. But can he deliver pole position ultimately when we get to Q3? That's obviously what matters, especially around this track. As Alex Albon does a 1:13.9. That's a horrifically slow lap time. He's about a second or, well, 0.8 probably at best away from getting into Q3. As Charles Leclerc now does a purple middle sector. Mercedes' rivals are responding. As Liam Lawson does a very good lap, a 1:12.6 as well. So Lawson now finding some pace. Charles Leclerc to the line. Goes quickest by 0.5. Ferrari absolutely have got the pace for pole position later. What about McLaren? They have as well, as another 0.5 quicker. Lando Norris goes quickest with a 1 minute 11.860. Esteban Ocon 1:13.3. That's actually a pretty good lap from Ocon. As Oscar Piastri goes 200ths quicker than his teammate and goes quickest. Piastri decided to join the party. As Pierre Gasly, 1:12.6, goes 9th. As Lewis Hamilton is up to 5th. As Gasly is 9th, and Colapinto has done a brilliant lap. He's gone up to P10. Not anymore, though, because Arvid Lindblad has just gone 7th, ahead of both Red Bulls. Look at that. And now the other racing bull of Yuki Tsunoda is on a lap. And Tsunoda slightly slower than Pierre Gasly after the first two sectors. So Tsunoda on course possibly to put himself in the top 10. With just under 8 minutes to go in Q2. What can the Japanese star do? He goes 11th. 0.012 of a second slower. He's right in the mix for a top 10 as Hulkenberg 13th. Bortoleto goes up to 8th. And that pushes Red Bull now down to 9th and 10th. The midfield has suddenly become a lot quicker than I think expected. But the pace is also a lot quicker than expected. I was not expecting them to be dipping into the 1:11 11s this early in qualifying. So I think I might have to revise my pole position time that I was saying earlier. I did say, I think, at best, a 1:11.2. But at this rate, I think we could see a 1:10 lap time. I think we could get maybe a 1:10.8, 1:10.9 later. Especially with the way this track is, how fast it's getting. But currently, Piastri quickest, Norris second, Leclerc third, Russell fourth, Hamilton fifth, all within a 10th and a half, that top 5. How close do you want it? It is just perfect. Antonelli then 6th, half a second down for some reason. Arvid Lindblad doing great, 7th. Bortoleto great as well in 8th. Max Verstappen 9th. Liam Lawson 10th. Pierre Gasly then 11th. Tsunoda 12th. Colapinto 13th. Hulkenberg 14th. Ocon in 15th and Albon 16th. Could Red Bull possibly get both cars eliminated from Q2? That would be something. But yeah, sorry, I was just checking Twitter there to see if there's any news. Yeah, I think in terms of the time to get into Q3, yeah, I might have to revise it. I think to get into Q3, I think you're gonna have to do probably a 1 minute, probably a 1 minute 12.3, 1:12.4 at the slowest, probably, to make sure that you get in. Maybe at the very slowest, a 1:12.5. Saying that, well, I think I immediately have to revise that because Pierre Gasly in 11th, he's currently he's in the drop zone on a 1:12.7, I think, or a 1:12.8, and he's certainly going to improve on that. So Yeah, if you can do a 1 minute 12.4 or better, then that should be enough to make Q3. So for the Red Bulls, they need to improve by 2 or 3 tenths at least if they want to get into Q3. If they stay on that lap time of 1:12.6, I think both of them will be gone. Because Gasly will improve, Tsunoda will improve, Hulkenberg very likely will improve. So, yeah. This is going to be potentially a surprising conclusion to Q2. Can the Red Bulls make it into Q3? Something I did not think at all I would be saying coming into the weekend. As we're looking at Max Verstappen, who's on a second warm-up lap. And yeah, can he improve by the really required time? If it's a improvement of 3 tenths, then that should be enough. And if he improves by 3 tenths, he'll go up to 6th place as he starts his final lap of Q2. Yeah, this Red Bull looking good through turn 1, 2, and 3. Now going flat, obviously, through turn 5 and 6. First sector is okay. It's an improved first sector. Liam Lawson has improved his first sector also. So has Antonelli. Antonelli basically matching Piastri. Piastri, though, has just done a purple first sector, so he's going even quicker, is the Australian. As Verstappen, 3 tenths down on Piastri after the first 2 sectors. So, yeah, this is definitely a good enough lap. And surely, as long as this final corner goes right, and it does, surely Max Verstappen is on his way to Q3. To the line, yeah, third, half a tenth down only on Piastri. That was actually a very good lap. Oscar Piastri improves to a 1:11.6. Liam Lawson goes 7th on a 1:12.3. I think that'll be enough, but only just. Antonelli goes 5th on a 1:11.9. Lando Norris goes quickest by 0.013 of a second. As Ocon hops back ahead of Albon. Ocon and Albon both out as expected. Here comes Nico Hulkenberg. Only 13th. Disappointing from him. And out-qualified yet again by Bortoleto, who for the minute is still in the top 10. Can he keep there? Not had a great middle sector. Going to have to really ace it in this final sector if he's going to get through. Saying that, Gasly's not had a good middle sector either. Gasly's half a tenth down on Bortoleto. As Bortoleto comes through the banking. To the line. He goes 9th. Yeah, Gasly. Only 11th on a 1:12.6. Just wasn't enough of an improvement. Tsunoda also has not improved by enough. And Colapinto has backed off, so presumably made a mistake. So there you go. Alpine, despite looking so good earlier this weekend, they've not made it in, somehow, to the top 10. And that is Q2 over and done with. So let's go through the drivers who have made it in to the top 10 shootout. Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, Kimi Antonelli, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Liam Lawson, Gabriel Bortoleto, and Arvid Lindblad. As a replay of Lewis Hamilton once again locking the inside front heavily into the first corner. Clearly feels like a setup issue he's having. Saying that, Russell did the same thing and went to the escape road. And knocked out in Q2, guys, Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, Nico Hulkenberg, Franco Colapinto, Esteban Ocon, and Alexander Albon. And Q3 will be underway in about 4 minutes' time. And it will be a 13-minute long session. I'll sync up the timer at the 12-minute mark. Looking at qualifying so far, McLaren look like the favourites to me to take pole here. They've been really, really quick throughout qualifying, especially there in Q2. They were 1 and 2 throughout the entire session. So, will McLaren take pole position for a second consecutive Grand Prix? Or will Ferrari take pole? Or possibly even Mercedes-Benz? We're about to find out. But one thing I am going to do is finish up the poll in the chat, because we have just about had a winner. And I'll wait for the poll to appear in the chat when eventually it does. As, yeah, another couple minutes it should be until we're underway. And the poll still hasn't appeared for me, so I'll have to wait. But, yeah, in terms of who's going to get pole position, I think it's between Norris, Piastri, Leclerc, Antonelli, Russell. I think those are the 5. Hamilton is just not at it. He clearly is having problems with setup. Max, I don't think has a fast enough car. And then obviously Lawson, Bortoletto, and Lindblad obviously are not going to get pole. So as we're seeing a replay of Pierre Gasly potentially making a mistake that led to him not making Q3. And I can't see any mistake. His lap looks absolutely fine. Or is he moaning about traffic? Gets a bit of oversteer on the exit of turn 10, I think that is. But look, the lap looks absolutely fine to me. Didn't have the greatest run through 11 and 12, which is that weird little chicane in front of that grandstand. But yeah, not the greatest lap, but it didn't look like a bad lap. But yeah, I don't know if he's miffed. Maybe it's whatever traffic or what, but he will be disappointed, no doubt, to to not have made the top 10. As Lindblad saying on the radio, "Fuck, we're lucky." Maybe they are. As the poll still has not appeared for me, so I have no idea what's happened. This is the longest it's gone. Let me see if I can view the stream on my end and see if it appears in the chat as a viewer. It'd be funny if it did. And yeah, it does. So I can see it if I click on the stream and view the stream, but for some reason when I looking at the chat as the streamer, it doesn't appear. So yeah, that makes no sense. So I asked you guys who will take pole position for the Dutch Grand Prix. 62 votes. Thank you guys for voting. And 34% of you have gone for Kimi Antonelli. 31% for Leclerc. 20% for Russell. And 15% for Lando Norris. As Q3 is about to begin. Will it be the orange Papia team on pole? Will it be the red Scarlet Ferrari? Or will it be the Silver Arrow Mercedes? We are about to find out. As the green light goes on at the end of the pit lane, and we are underway for Q3. I'll sync up the timer at the 12-minute mark, which is in, 45 seconds? As we're looking at Charles Leclerc just coming out of the loop pit lane exit. Is it replay, presumably with unsafe release or something? Yeah, it's not even unsafe release, let's be honest. And yeah, Max saying on the radio, we'll probably have George crying on the radio about pit release, but it was nothing unsafe. Yeah, it was nothing wrong with it. Funny that you said that though, because yeah. Yeah, you'll get drivers complain about that sort of stuff, but there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. I've missed the syncing up point. Sorry about that. If they didn't show the replay, that would have helped. But yeah, I'll sync it up at the 11-minute mark. We're not missing anything though, because the drivers are on additional warm-up laps, because it's getting, I think, even cooler at Zandvoort. The wind is blowing quite a bit. It's nearly 5 p.m. local time. So entering the latter part of the day now. As Russell asking, is the rain still looking to hit? And Mercedes saying, yes, so we expect it to be within the last 5 minutes of the session. So if there is going to be rain, it'll be in the last 5 minutes, but I still don't think we will see rain. If we do, it'll be a very minor shower, I think. Probably. But that tells you why they're all coming out so quickly. Because they have to, because you just don't know. What if the heavens open properly and it does absolutely chuck it down? Then that'll be it. As Max Verstappen is doing another warm-up lap. As we've got 10.5 minutes to go now in qualifying. Who will take what is such an important pole position for the final Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort? Here is Kimi Antonelli, who starts his first attempt at pole at Zandvoort. Mercedes, by the way, have never won the Dutch Grand Prix in their history. If they're going to do it, pole position is a must. As Antonelli flies through turn 5 and 6. And he sets, I'd say, a pretty good first sector time. Can the Mercedes, though, be quick enough for the rest of the lap? As Antonelli exits turn 10 into turn 11 and 12. As Lando Norris has done a 1:11.3. Piastri a 1:11.5. That's a brilliant time, though, from Lando Norris, but will it be good enough for now for pole position as here comes Antonelli? Only third and 3/10 down. Just not quick enough. Verstappen only just behind Antonelli in fourth by 0.02 of a second. Here comes Russell. Purple final sector, but only second. Liam Lawson goes sixth. We now wait for the two prancing horses as they prance to the line. Charles Leclerc, fourth, 0.3 down. We're now looking at Arvid Lindblad. Lewis Hamilton's on a lap, but he is miles off the pace. As Lindblad goes eighth. Yeah, Hamilton, he's going to go behind Lawson with this lap. He's absolutely nowhere. And he's been nowhere all weekend, sadly. He goes eighth. 1:12.1. He's only quarter of a second ahead of Lindblad. Lewis Hamilton, eighth. That's not what you need if you're going to be fighting for a world championship. Yeah, Antonelli's only fifth, but eighth is a disaster. But with 7.5 minutes to go in qualifying, Lando Norris is on provisional pole position as the teams now get their cars back in the pits and are trying to, as quickly as possible, get them refueled, new tyres on so they can get back out there before the rain possibly hits. You'd think if they're so certain the rain's going to hit, you'd think they would have filled the car up with enough fuel for the whole session and just done a racing pit stop, but I still don't think they are absolutely certain that the rain will hit. But at the minute, McLaren are on pole, Lando Norris on pole, Russell second, Piastri third, Leclerc fourth, Antonelli fifth, Verstappen sixth, Lawson seventh, Hamilton eighth, Lindblad ninth, and Gabriel Bortoleto in 10th. That is your current top 10 with 6.5 minutes to go in qualifying. Will it rain? There looks like there's some rain clouds in the distance, but over the track, it doesn't look to me like it's an absolute certainty that it's going to rain. As Antonelli and Norris and Piastri already on track, as Russell there overtaking Piastri on the exit of the pit lane. He is absolutely determined, is Russell, to get on with it. And not only because he wants pole position, as Norris, I don't think he's blocking him, but he definitely didn't quite see him going through up the hill, turn 7. But with Antonelli, his teammate, down in 5th, this is a big chance for George Russell for the championship to close the gap if he can get onto pole with Antonelli possibly out of play, at least for now. As Lewis Hamilton now on track. Everyone on the circuit. And they're all on out laps, but will they do an additional warm-up lap? Or will they just go for it? Let's see. As Antonelli crosses the line, is he going to start a proper fast run? No, it looks like this is an additional warm-up lap to me. As Lando Norris through turn 2. Now the banked turn 3. Well, no, it looks like they're pushing. I mean, to be honest, they may as well just do 2 quick laps in a row if they can. And forget about doing an additional warm-up lap. As George Russell has just done an incredible first sector, quarter of a second quicker than Norris. Incredible. As we're on board with Bortoleto. who's coming up to the final corner. Understeering a bit through the final corner. Lando Norris, purple middle sector is that. Cover pace enough. Russell, though, does a very good middle sector. As Bortoletti goes 8th ahead of Hamilton. Antonelli onto pole. A 1:11.2, but will he keep it? No, he will not. As Lando Norris does a 1:11.1. Russell goes 2nd. A 10th slower. Here comes Piastri. Only 4th. Where are the Red Bulls and the Ferraris? Max Verstappen goes 5th. Liam Lawson stays in 7th. As we're now looking at Arvid Lindblad coming through the final corner. Is the rain falling, or is there still enough grip for another lap? Because we've still got 3 minutes to go. As Lindblad stays in 10th. So maybe if the rain is falling, maybe it's just now starting to affect things. Charles Leclerc's only just started a lap. Will it prove to be too late or the perfect time? He's a 10th down on Norris up to the first sector. And now into turn 9. Now the left-hander of 10, which is at such a difficult corner. And, there's drops of rain. Doesn't feel like... I mean, he's improving his sectors, but it doesn't feel like the track is in good enough condition. As Leclerc into the final corner, I think he's going to improve his lap time, but I don't think he's going to go much higher than where he is now. He comes up to the line. 5th. And yeah, Ferrari, I think, left it too late. As Hamilton is on a much better lap. He might actually pop ahead of Leclerc with this lap if he has a good final sector. Currently 9th. He needs a good final sector. As Hamilton through the banking and to the finish line. Lewis Hamilton does go 5th. That's important. At least gets ahead of his teammate. But the top 4 and everyone else is in the pits. That's it. Lando Norris, for the 2nd race running and for the 2nd time at Zandvoort, takes pole position for the Dutch Grand Prix. George Russell will line up alongside him in all British front row. Kimi Antonelli, the championship leader, 3rd. He will be disappointed not to be ahead of his teammate, but not too disappointed because Lewis Hamilton, his nearest championship rival, is in 5th. And even though Russell might very well overtake Hamilton in the championship for 2nd tomorrow, at least Antonelli is only 1 place behind his teammate. Piastri 4th. Maybe he could have got onto the front row there, but he was only a 10th and a half off his teammate. Not too bad. Lewis Hamilton 5th. Charles Leclerc 6th. Ferrari disappoint once again. Why am I not surprised? 7th and 8th, the 2 Red Bulls. That's really where they should be. Red Bull are the slowest of the front 4 teams. Verstappen 7th, Lawson 8th. Bortoletti 9th. Congrats to him. Brilliant qualifying. Arvid Lindblad 10th. And then the rest of the field. Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, Nico Hulkenberg, Franco Colapinto, Esteban Ocon, Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll, Oliver Behrman, Valtteri Bottas, and Sergio Perez. That is it for qualifying, and that is your starting grid for tomorrow's race. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as he doesn't mess up the start, Lando Norris will win tomorrow's race. And if Antonelli doesn't have a great race, who knows? Maybe Norris can start closing in on that championship deficit. But let me just quickly ask you guys who your driver of the day is for qualifying. And let me just do the options. So Norris, Russell. Other than Norris and Russell, it's hard really to pick anyone else. Hamilton. And you know what? I'm going to put Liam Lawson in there for being as close to Verstappen on lap time as he was. My driver of the day, though, Lando Norris. He has been in top form in these last few races. And he, did McLaren have ultimately the quickest car in qualifying today? Yeah, probably, but not by much. Still by a very slim margin. But ultimately, when the rain was slowly starting to come down, he delivered the lap when it mattered. Something that he isn't always the best at, but he's done it today. And as long as he's leading at the end of the first lap tomorrow, I think he will be winning tomorrow's Dutch Grand Prix. But let me go. Let me know, guys, in the sorry, my throat today in tatters. What was I going to say? Yeah, let me know in the chat what do you think of qualifying, and let me know in the poll who is your driver of the day. Hamilton outpaced Charles, indeed. Somehow, no idea how. Leclerc has been consistently miles ahead of Hamilton all weekend, and then suddenly Hamilton gets ahead. So, be interesting to see what happens in the race there. Because if Leclerc is much quicker in the race, will Ferrari tell Lewis to get out of the way? They might have to. Astro says, reckon Russell will win tomorrow, which will be good for the title fight, such as it is. We'll see. Looking at history, normally the pole position man leads into turn one. Saying that, Lando Norris, we know, does not have a good record of leading through the first lap of a Grand Prix, especially from pole position. So that is a potential banana skin for Lando. Looney saying Charles's race has been ruined already. He is done. Well, let's calm down, because if what if Leclerc gets ahead of Hamilton at the start? Then it takes away that potential issue that could come up. Team orders and being held up and all of that. So yeah, wait till tomorrow's race start. But in terms of tomorrow's race, like I said, I think Lando Norris wins. I think as long as he's leading at the end of the first lap, unless McLaren have a dramatic drop off of pace tomorrow, which I don't think they will, then I think Norris wins. I know they weren't that quick in the sprint, but the race is quite a bit different. So yeah, I think McLaren will be fine as long as they lead it. Like I said, end of lap one, then I think they've got the win pretty much nailed on. And then I think for me, what's most interesting is Mercedes, because we've seen regularly this year Antonelli be quicker than Russell, especially in the races. If that continues to be the case, will Russell will Russell how much will he fight? What do you think Max will do, and where do you think he'll finish tomorrow? Now, Shazza, ditto Oscar. Max will finish in 7th. The only way he finishes any higher is DNFs or, severe bad luck for anyone ahead. Piastri, I think he could be the very much the interesting one in that fight for the podium or even the win, because he, I don't know what the predicted strategies are for tomorrow, but he very well, I think, could be someone who does an alternate strategy. Maybe goes longer and goes for a one-stop race if the Mercedes cars are going for a two-stop. So, yeah, he could be the cork in the bottle. But let me just see. Yeah, I'll finish up the results of this poll. We haven't had many votes, but it's pretty clear who's winning it. 16 votes on who is your driver of the day for qualifying at Zandvoort, and 63% for Lando Norris, 19% for Hamilton, 13% for Russell, 5% for Liam Lawson. But yeah, guys, that is it for this qualifying watch along for the Dutch Grand Prix. Thank you guys for coming along. Again, first stream of the month, and good to see you all. In terms of the plan, again, there will not be a race watch along tomorrow. Reason is because the races at Zandvoort are a snooze fest, so I will not be here for a race watch along. I will, though, as usual, be doing a podcast on Monday to review whatever happens in the race tomorrow, so make sure to check that out. And then remember, in 2 weeks' time is the next race on the calendar, and it is the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, the Temple of Speed. And I will be doing a qualifying and very likely as well a race watch along for that weekend. And then obviously the podcast the day after the Grand Prix as well. So that's what's coming up here on the channel in the next couple of weeks. Thanks for coming along. Other than me doing the podcast on Monday, I'm now going to return to my holiday period that I've been having for the last couple of weeks, and I've got for another 9 days. And guys, until my podcast on Monday, hopefully you guys enjoy the race tomorrow. Hopefully it's a bit better than I'm expecting. And yeah, enjoy the race, and I'll cover it on Monday on my podcast. And until Monday and until the race, guys, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.